All right, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll start off where everyone else does. As far as earliest childhood memories, what are you getting into?
That's a good question. On my way over here, I grew up right here in Westmont. Well, Clarendon Hills, but I grew up right here in Westmont. So on my way over here, I kind of took the long way and drove past my old house and all that kind of stuff. So my earliest childhood memories really started when we moved here, which was first grade. That's really when it starts to get clear for me. And in general, my memories of my childhood are pretty hazy, but I do remember moving into our house, literally due south from where we're sitting right now.
Okay.
So on my way here, I drove past there and it was like trying to just remember. And I went past my best friend's house, who was 2 doors down, and it looks like his parents still live there. And I definitely remember going to grade school. I went to a public grade school, which is like about 4 blocks from where this house was. I remember my first day. The teacher turned over one of the other students' desks as he was eating Cheetos out of his desk. And I remember thinking, holy shit, what have I got myself into? Miss Pohanka just turned this kid's desk over. It's day one. So these are the type of things that were coming up as I was on my way over here. I don't know. Start there.
So a desk is getting flipped over. Is this like she had been warning him for a while, or no warning, just comes over and flips this thing?
Well, of course she must have been warning him. She was a great teacher.
Okay.
And she was probably fed up, but yeah, she picked his desk up and turned it over, and like all the shit fell out of it, like including his chips, but like notebooks and markers and like pencil shavings and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, that's about as far back as I can go. My family's from the South Side here in Chicago.
Okay.
I was born on the South Side, and then at about 2 months, we moved to California for my dad's job, and I lived there until 2 or 3, and then moved to Grand Rapids, and then back to Chicago, where we ended up in Tinley Park, and then later in Clarendon Hills, just south of here.
Okay.
But up until Clarendon Hills, I don't really remember anything. I don't remember anything from California. I barely remember living in Michigan.
Okay.
Just kind of flashes of stuff. I don't really remember much from my childhood. Really bits and pieces. But
so
maybe you'll tease it out.
You met your first grade, your best friend from there. Did you meet him in class? Was it like because he was next door to you? How did you meet him?
Yeah, it was because he was next door, and I think it was like, it would be easy if we walked to school together. His mom talked to my mom, that sort of thing. And we lost touch later, like around junior high area. He ended up switching, going to private. He went to Montini. And so we kind of fell off, but I had already established a ton of other friends. Some of my best friends in this whole world go back to first grade. In fact, I'm going to Los Angeles next week to see some friends.
Nice.
One of which I had met in first grade here in Westmont, and the other I met in 5th grade here in Westmont, and we've been brothers.
So were you playing sports with these kids, just hanging outside? What was going on?
So my childhood, we're playing I played a lot of basketball as a kid, rode my bikes a bunch. I really remember being outdoors most of the time. I can't remember like what it was like in winter, that doesn't really stand out to me, but riding bikes, playing basketball, having like round robin tournaments on a 6-foot, basketball hoop at my friend Dave's house, just a couple doors down. And, that's really what stands out to me. I was outdoors a lot. I was a very active kid. I have a lot of hard time focusing on one thing. So I kind of like to bounce around.
Gotcha.
Even through to today. Yeah.
I would say that there's a theme, and as we get closer and closer to the younger people I have on here, so far it hasn't happened yet, but everyone's been able to stay outside for an extended period of time and like go play with friends and stuff like that. But I know it's coming to where it's just like, I know around me, I don't see that many kids like playing outside or things of that nature. But for your parents, did they say, don't come home? Or like, what did they want you doing?
I think my parents wanted me the fuck away.
Yeah.
And it's just, my dad was he worked his ass off, he was a traveling salesman for most of my childhood.
Okay.
So he was gone a lot. And when he was home, he was very stressed out. We struggled with finances were always really tight. The area in which we grew up, like where we lived, was not exactly cheap.
Yeah.
And so we were always stretched. So we were, probably lower middle class, but, we didn't go on vacations. We didn't have any money for that sort of thing. So when my dad was home, he was usually in the backyard drinking.
Yeah.
And my mom was doing the best she could to keep it all together and take care of me. I've got two brothers. I got an older brother, a younger brother. Older brother's 4 years older than me. My younger brother's 6 years younger.
Okay.
So being the middle child, I probably leaned into that, I kind of was on my own, figured a lot of things out for myself.
At what age did you know that like finances were a thing that you...
Too early.
Okay.
Way too early. And I don't say that to like begrudge my parents or anything like that. I was just really aware.
Gotcha.
Both because my friends who I mentioned, they would be going on vacations and stuff, and we didn't do that. That was foreign to me. So that felt different. Or when there was like a school trip or something, like my mom would have to like pick up extra shifts or get a second job to cover. I remember 7th grade, I believe. It was like a class trip to Springfield, like overnight kind of deal.
Yeah.
And my mom had to pick up extra shifts, waiting tables, which she hated, just to pay for that. And then the following year, 8th grade, was like Washington, D.C. It was, I was like, I have to go.
Right.
Like, I can't be the only kid who doesn't go. I think it was like $275. And like, that was like impossible.
Right.
Like it was like my mom had to pick up another job to do that. And she did it, or my parents together figured out a way to do it. But like, that was a major stretch for us. So I knew early on, like, and well before 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I knew like we just didn't have what others had.
So growing up like that, did it change your work ethic? How do you think that molded you through like middle school and high school?
I was definitely cast in that mold of like, no way in hell will I ever let myself be in this situation.
Okay.
And again, I don't say that to begrudge my parents or besmirch them. They worked their asses off and did the best they could. And, they took care of 3 boys and just did the best they could. But I just knew early on, like, no way. I'll never be in this situation. I want to have enough to do the things I want to do. And that meant I'm going to work my ass off. So that was probably started in about 6th grade, I'd say. It was where I knew what I wanted to do. And both because I was interested in computers, but also because I had an aunt who worked just up the road from here at McDonald's, and she was like programming in DOS, and she mentioned like, you need to get into computers. Like,
gotcha.
Just like point blank, like computers are going to be the future. You need to get into this. And of course now they're everywhere,
right?
But that wasn't the case then. We didn't even have a computer. And so, somehow we got a hold of a Packard Bell, and I just knew I'm going to do shit with computers because my aunt says there's money, there's going to be money in this, there's going to be careers in this. And so from that moment on, I was like, I'm going to work in computers and tech in some way. And I'm just going to work my ass off. So
does that mean like, hey, I'm just going to like focus on this stuff and school doesn't matter as much? Or you knew that like you had to get solid grades to kind of progress where you needed to go?
The latter.
Okay.
I remember I wasn't really a good student. I mentioned, I don't know if we were recording yet, but like I have a difficult time focusing on any one task. I found school to be really boring and really challenging.
Really challenging or rarely challenging?
Really challenging.
Okay, gotcha.
Like I struggled. And so like in about 6th grade, I think my dad recognized something to that effect. Like I wasn't on the honor roll or anything. All my friends were on the honor roll and I was like not, and I didn't really care. I was like kind of just like, floating through school. Like I wasn't really focused. I didn't really have goals or anything. All I really cared about was like being with my friends and playing basketball. And I think my dad said like, I will figure out a way to put a cable TV in your bedroom if you can make the honor roll.
Let's go.
So second half of 6th grade, I just flipped a switch. Like I'm going to go hard. I'm going to work my ass off. And that for some reason, having that goal in mind, like really changed things. And then I realized like, this is like a snowball. Once you get it rolling downhill, like it's just going to keep going. So I got way more into my academics. It's sort of like it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like you did a little bit better. It felt good. You wanted to do that again,
right?
And again and again and again. So I ended up, becoming a pretty good student, and, by high school, I was in all the honors classes and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if that would have happened if my dad wasn't like, yo, here's this carrot.
Right.
Why don't you work your ass off?
Was it effort? Was it skills that you learned? Like for like specifics, where you like, I'm going to actually spend time studying, doing homework, flashcards. Like how does that look like when you turn it around?
Yeah, just grit and effort.
Okay.
Again, I don't think I'm naturally gifted at much. I think I'm just a hard worker, and
okay.
I'm sure we'll get into it, but like sports in high school was where I really kind of leaned into effort and character, and just like, you've got to put in the reps, you've got to put in the work if you want to see any results. And I really believe that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think at any point it came naturally or easy or anything like that. It was a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm. So did you have to ask your parents to study with you, or how did your habits change on that end?
Well, you've just reminded me of like an early childhood trauma.
Okay.
But like I said, my parents were really busy with 3 boys and working all the time. And let's just say, I wouldn't say that either of them like, like nobody went to college.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was the first of my generation, like, to go to college. I had a couple cousins who went, but like for my family, I was the first to go. My parents had never been, they couldn't afford it, had no interest, started a family young, all that kind of stuff. I remember in between 4th and 5th grade, so maybe it was a little bit before 6th grade, that I started to like turn things around.
Yeah.
But I remember the summer between 4th and 5th grade, at the end of 4th grade, they told me, hey, you're going to get bumped up to like advanced math next year. And I was like fucking hyped, because that's where all my friends were.
Yeah.
But I knew those guys were doing long division, and I've never done division.
Yeah.
But I was like, I can't I can't say that I don't know how to do this. Then I'm like, so as a kid, I was just like, I remember coming home. It was probably the last day of 4th grade and being like, I can't do this math. Like somebody has to help me. And I don't think my mom knew how to do long division.
Right.
So she was just like, you'll be fine. Like we pay the school. It's public school. They're going to take care of you.
Yeah.
And so for almost all of 5th grade, I faked it.
Wow.
This motherfucker is sitting right across from me, John Durrani. I'll never forget it. He's not far from here, probably right now. Smart dude. We would have a long division. We'd have a multiplication question and a long division question to start every class.
Okay.
And I'd just be the last one to turn my shit in, because I would just watch John. Okay, let me just write exactly what he just wrote. So by the end, by like 3/4 of the way through the year, the teacher caught on it. She's like, "Oh, you have no idea what any of this is." And so I would like do fine on the homework assignments, the daily, but then tests would come and I'd be like, I don't know, because he would blast through his and I wouldn't be able to copy. And then I think a couple other kids who had gotten moved up were in the same boat, so they like stopped the presses. We're gonna reteach everyone long division. I remember people rolling their eyes, but yeah, if that hadn't happened, I bet you I still wouldn't know long division. I just like faked it. Mm-hmm. But I remember as a kid, like that crushed me. Mm-hmm. I remember thinking all summer long, I'm not gonna be able to do this. I'm not gonna be able to do this. I'm not gonna be able to do this, and really not getting any help. Like I didn't know how to ask for help. My parents were too busy. Even if I wanted a tutor, they couldn't afford one. Like it was just like I saw no option. Yeah. So all I did was worry about it, like for 3 months.
Yeah. So do you feel? I feel like struggle or failure, not knowing something, is kind of like shame is brought upon. I would say in art, a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Like, what would have you needed to see? Just because I'm raising my daughter and I'm trying to be like, it's okay. Like she's trying to put on her pants right now. Like it's upset when she does it. I'm like, how do I say that's fine? But like, what would you have needed to hear? Or what would that look like for you not to be like ashamed or worried about not knowing something? Yeah,
I don't know that like anyone could have said some like I think I was just internalizing things. And definitely a like worrier at heart. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if there's any like panacea that would have fixed things. I certainly wish I had more support. Okay. Like just that, hey, it's gonna be fine. We'll figure this out together. Like that kind of vibe probably would have been helpful. Mm-hmm. I don't know that would have like tamped it all down, but like same with my kids, try really, really hard, and I suck at this, but like patience and just care. And, you know, especially my daughter, she's going to be in 3rd grade now, and she's starting to care what other people think. You know, like early on, they don't give a shit.
Right.
But now she's like, what other people think of her is starting to really matter. And so trying really hard to show her, like, it doesn't matter. All that matters is what you think.
Yeah.
And, you know, just because they're ahead or she's taller or whatever, like, you're living your own life. That's a real hard lesson to learn. You know, I'm damn near 40 and I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah,
So.
no, for sure. So you said sports were something that you found out you had to work harder in. Was that doing drills at home, or you just saw other kids like that were more skillful, or how did that work out?
Well, like I mentioned, I was really into basketball. And I'm like 5'6" on a good day, and I grew 2 inches.
Let's go.
Freshman year of college. So I graduated high school. I was probably 5'4". So I was, you know, fast, quick, could dribble, couldn't really shoot, but I was too friggin' small.
Yeah.
So I played freshman year, and they split the squad into 2 squads, like an A and a B team, and I was like right on the border. So I sometimes would play A, and most of the time play B. Like I'd start on B, but ride the bench on A.
Gotcha.
And then sophomore year, like all my friends hit puberty and shot up 6 inches and got stronger and put on weight. And I didn't. Like, I was a real late bloomer. And so I got cut.
Okay.
And I remember that morning, like we had tryouts. The next morning, of course, it's like posted in the locker room.
Yeah.
I was the first one there by an hour. And I knew before anyone else that I didn't make the team. And it leveled me, dude.
Yeah.
It was all I did. I only played basketball. I wasn't into any other sports. In junior high, I ran like cross country and track and just kind of did everything.
Yeah.
But, you know, so sophomore year, I was like, "What? Who am I?" Like, it crushed me.
Yeah.
It, like, I didn't know what to do. And somebody said, like, you should go out for the track team. And so I went out for track, and I fell in love with it.
Really?
Like, had an amazing coach. He turned out to be such a huge impact in my life, absolute mentor. And most importantly, he believed in me. Like early on, he showed me that he believed in me. Like, I was injured, and he took me into, like, you know, I had sore knees or something from like running. And he was like, let's get you some ice. And, you know, he was just like, you know, the work you're putting in, like, this is how you go downstate.
Yeah.
This is how you get on a 4x8 relay team. Like, you could do that.
You run the 800?
I was running the 800.
Oh my God.
I just remember this so clearly, and I just looked up at him, and it was like, man, you're the like first motherfucker who believed in me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, now this is what I do. Like, and now my identity completely changed in that moment, and now I'm a runner. And so by the end of high school, I was like captain of cross country and track, and absolutely like freshman year, just on the edge of being good.
Okay.
Like, I was above average, and but I never made it downstate. Like, we missed our 4x8 relays junior and senior year, just missed.
Okay.
Like I don't know, a second or something. Like, we just missed the cutoff. Again, crushed me.
Yeah.
But, you know, I put in a lot of miles between sophomore and senior year.
Had you ever done track or anything like that?
I mean, I
like
did it in cross
gym
country.
class?
Yeah. Yeah. So not really.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know the first thing about track. I didn't know about how to do handoffs or where to stand on the track for each race or any of the races, what the hell any of that means.
Yeah.
But I got into it. I jumped in with both feet.
How'd you pick the 800? That's just what they said they needed, or
well, you know, middle distance
okay.
is just kind of where I thrived, I guess. Like, I was too bored for the 2 mile. Definitely not a sprinter. I started on the sprint squad, and then they realized, like, this dude needs to be running long. And like, no one really wanted to do it, I guess. So like, I don't know, 2 laps on a track at full tilt just kind of suited me, I guess. Because I'm not super fast, like, for sprinting, and I'm definitely don't have the legs for the 2 mile. But the 4x8 and the 800 just suited me.
Well, I feel like if you can sprint, the 800 is just a trap, because like you're like, oh, it's just 2 laps. You take the first 500 meters, and then you're like, oh no.
No, I think it's the most grueling race on track. I mean, of course, I have a horse in this race, but no pun intended. You know, I think it's the hardest race because you've got to. I mean, it's 2 minutes all out.
Yeah.
Basically. If you're any good, you're
Right.
hovering around 2 minutes at the high school
Is
level.
that what you were hitting?
I was like 204.
No.
Yeah, and I was still not good enough.
Wow.
I had a friend who ran like a 156 at state, and he was like 9th.
That's
These kids are flying now. It's just crazy. I should caveat, I probably ran a 204 in a relay. So like,
does that not count?
It counts, but like you're handing off and they're taking the baton across the finish line.
Okay.
You know, or like, so that maybe it was 799.
Oh,
798.
okay.
You know, like,
so we'll have an asterisk with plus or minus.
you know,
1 yard.
yeah, when you're doing handoffs, like at some point, 10 of those meters, someone else has run.
Yeah.
You know, I was usually lead off. So,
So like, let's say this is the 10 meters. Do you try to start here and then get it by here, or like what's
you're talking about handoffs?
Yeah, like what's the plan when you're doing a
Well,
handoff?
at the high school level, and God, I used to coach this too, so I should know this a little bit better. But the 4x8 and the 4x8 is like usually an open handoff. Like you see a 4x1 where they're
Yes.
like
Yeah,
this
yeah.
because it's 100 meters and like
Every
millisecond counts. The 4x8 is really, especially at the high school level, like you're dead by the end. So that
Gotcha.
person's dragging ass and you're kind of waiting, and you've got like, I don't know, 100 feet to make the exchange. And so it's usually like an open handoff where you turn open and they just drop it in. Like it's not very technical. You could do it right this second. Of course you need to practice it. But it wasn't super technical or anything like that.
So then it's like you're kind of in a line here, and then whoever's coming up is here, and then they kind of move out of the way. It's not.
Yeah, they
you're
do
not
like a
in your-
waterfall. It usually everyone's packed down to lane 1 by that point. Or
Gotcha.
if a bunch of runners are coming in at the same time, like you might have an exchange in lane 1 and one in lane 2, or one between 2 and 3.
Gotcha.
Like it's kind of a mess, free for all. Not like you see in the 4x1, which is everyone's got their own lane. They have to stay in their lane the whole way. The 4x8, after like the first lap, everybody collapses down to
Gotcha.
lane 1, like like you'd see in the 2 mile or something.
So we've got basketball to track. What are we doing as far as, because 800 burning a couple calories there? What do you do for food?
Oh my God, we were in high school. Forget high school nutrition, dude. We would run to Taco Bell, and in cross country, we would run to Taco Bell and eat, and then come home. I swear to God, that happened.
That sounds risky.
Yeah, you know, we were idiots, absolute idiots. But in high school, we just ate whatever we wanted. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
I had no, and I would say now, later in life, I ended up coaching with my mentor, like this guy who believed in me, Steve Wolf. He's still coaching over at Westmont. Absolute like gem of a human being.
Yeah.
He's probably touched the lives of so many kids in this area. God, I lost where I was going with that.
Nutrition. Taco
Oh,
Bell.
nutrition. When I coached with him, we would talk a lot about nutrition. Like this is years later, and like his coaching style and the things he did had really matured. That thing is just so ridiculous. Like what an absolute ridiculous thing that you do. Every time I see you do that, I think it's ridiculous. It's hilarious. When I came back to coach with him later in life, it was obvious that he had like things had ramped up and gotten more serious. So when I was in high school, sometimes we would do doubles, like we would practice before school and then practice after school.
Track before school.
Yeah, track and cross country.
I only heard that for swimming, but I didn't know people were doing that in track. That's
Oh,
awesome.
now they were like 3 days a week doubles, sometimes 4 or 5 days a week
My
doubles.
Lord.
During the summer, definite doubles every day. Like
That 2 minute 800 is making more sense now.
yeah, but for me, we weren't really doing that when I was in high school. But like when I came back to coach, you know, after college, it was like, oh, this is a whole serious program. You know, like they've really ramped things up. And so nutrition, I think, was a big part of that. We would tell the kids like, this is the type of stuff you should be eating, and make sure you're drinking this much water. And I'm sure it was in one ear out the other.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just don't see that at the high school level.
So for yourself, what was your knowledge of nutrition when you were in high school? Like, what did you see your parents do? Did they tell you to do something different? Like, what was your knowledge at that point?
I don't really recall any coaching of any kind or any thought whatsoever going into my nutrition in high school. Like none. I bet you I could have been a lot better if I'd been eating a lot more protein and hitting the weights. Really, all I cared about was running.
Yeah.
So I was so skinny. So like there was 0% body fat on me. Like, none. We would test it in gym class, and I would be like so happy if it was like just nothing. What I wouldn't give to have that body again.
So like when you're eating at home for, we'll say, breakfast and dinner, is your mom cooking it?
Oh,
Are you
good
off on
question.
your own?
Yeah, my mom was always the one. She was the caretaker. She took care of everything, and come from an Irish Catholic family. I was not raised Catholic.
Okay.
But my parents were both raised Irish Catholic, and that meant meat and potatoes like basically every night. Like it's just that's what's for dinner.
Yeah.
Without question. There are no vegetables of any kind. My dad would not eat them. So I didn't start eating vegetables until I was in college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that there was any negative connotation with food, or it was just this is what we're doing here?
No, I don't. There's no negative connotation. That was just what it was, and also what we could afford.
Gotcha.
Like there was, and what they had time to prepare. It was always something simple, chicken or pork chops or some kind of beef. But
Gotcha.
Always super simple.
Okay, so let's go junior, senior year.
Yep.
We know we're still doing the old computer stuff, but we're loving track. What does life look like going junior, senior year?
I started to get really serious about what college I was going to go to.
Okay.
And started to really think about okay, I've got all these skills in tech, and I'm at that point I was taking 2 hours of my day for independent study, where I was studying 3D design and 3D art, and
What year is this?
Senior year. I was instead of electives, I had kind of carved out time with in the art room, where all the computers were, and really I was just tinkering and learning how to program. And
do you have a teacher, or that was this?
Yeah, I had a teacher,
okay.
but he was an absolute hippie. He was just
he was put into that class.
No, he was really interested in all of it, but he was just you're doing it.
Gotcha.
Just keep going. Here's some examples of what other kids have done, and go do it. So I ended up building a portfolio of my work on a CD-ROM.
Okay.
And sent that to universities as
wow.
Let me get into your program. So I really wanted to go to Purdue. They had the best interactive media, they probably called it at the time. But they only took 90 kids or something. And 2 kids from our grade applied, me and this other dude, Steve. Steve got in, I didn't. I got into Purdue, but I didn't get into that program.
Okay.
So they were you can come for engineering and then switch. And I was fuck all that. And the other school, one of the other schools I sent to was Bradley down in Peoria. And they were we'll give you money to come, which no one else had said that.
Right.
And this is obviously super important to me. And they were and you can skip the first few classes. You've already clearly mastered some of this stuff. So
nice.
You can just, and so I was all right, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Let me go there. And my parents, we'd never been through this. And I would have to say the guidance that I had from school counselor or whatever, I think was just really lacking.
Okay.
So I had no idea. All I knew is
I've heard a lot of positive experiences from guidance counselors. So
I feel I could do such a better job. But I remember knowing I had to fill out the FAFSA form, which was some financial aid situation, and no other guidance really. So I had chosen Bradley. They had a program and a degree in the field that I was interested in. And really no other thought went into it other than that my cousin went there and he liked it. And it looks like a really nice school. And they were going to offer me some money. So I think they gave me $20,000 total.
Let's go.
But tuition there was $23,000 a year.
Unfortunate.
So it was $100,000 for me to go there. But
yeah.
The government was just printing money, take as much as you want. I didn't give a shit. It was this is later. That's a problem for later. So I just signed up. My parents were just whatever, let's do it. Let's borrow all of it. In hindsight, I shouldn't have done that. I should have gone. I should have spent more time with a counselor and with my parents, thinking about it. And, like I said, my parents didn't have any money. So there was no fund.
Right.
There was no 529 account that had any money in it.
Yeah.
It was this is just, you're going to borrow all this money, or we are going to borrow all this money. So that's what we did.
Well, I'm pretty sure the thought process from my parents, so my mom paid for her school. She went to NIU, and she paid for it by working the summers. So their conversation they had with us is oh yeah, you're just gonna work and then pay it off as you're going through school. And I'm I don't think that's how it works now, Mom.
Yeah.
That's not exactly how the money situation is.
Yeah, it's not the finances don't work out.
Yeah.
You couldn't make enough in 4 summers to pay your tuition. It's just exorbitant. It's such a fucking racket.
So when you went there freshman year, was this like your first vacation? Like, what was being on your own like?
Whirlwind, dude.
Okay.
It was whirlwind. And at that point I was like, I don't know what the right word would be, but I was like really naive. Like I went to college and I don't think I had drank one time in high school. I think I drank one time in high school. So like I was like, I wouldn't say straight edge, but like I didn't even know what straight edge was, but I was like pretty much straight edge. Like I did not
why no drinking or drugs or anything like that in college or in high school?
Because I was too focused on fitness and sport. And my coach was like, there is like no tolerance for any of that. You're caught doing any of that, you're off.
Yeah.
So like I just wouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure my friends were into it or whatever, and I knew they were partying. But I also like had met my now wife, and we were close. And she wasn't into any of that. So like we just hung out all.
How'd you meet her? How'd that happen?
God, that happened. I probably met her in 6th grade, and like a bunch of my friends dated her up through into high school, and then she was a year younger. And junior year, I don't know, we had a sock hop. We danced, and like I was just like enamored. And then from that moment forward, I was like, well, I'm gonna date her. Like
that's phenomenal. You just knew.
Yeah, I guess, and by now we've been together 22 years, 2 kids.
There you go. Working out.
It's working out. Yeah, it's a total journey. It's an absolute journey. We've been through it all, but there's like two relationships in your life that are most important. First would be your relationship with yourself, and second is your relationship with your spouse.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's good. We have to make some shirts like that.
Yeah, let's make some shirts. Make some money.
So freshman year, kind of oblivious to what everyone else is doing
Clueless.
on that end. So what was your first, is it first day, first weekend? Like what was your introduction to that lifestyle?
It was a few weeks in. I was like,
took your time.
I was very set on I'm not gonna drink, I'm not gonna party in college. And then like, I don't know, 10 days in, I was like, this is the coolest shit ever. Like we could just do whatever we want. Like, so yeah, it didn't take long for me to become a drinker and get into partying in college. But I would say too that I was one of the most tame people compared to others, like who would party all the time.
Gotcha.
I was still very focused on my school and making sure that I was like setting myself up for my career, and like, if I missed a class, I would like apologize to the teacher.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so sorry. Like I fucking missed. I slept through it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I would be mortified if I missed a class. So I took school very seriously still.
Yeah.
And because I was no longer competing in sports, which is so stupid, I totally could have.
Yeah.
I just like assumed, nope, there's no way I could ever like run at the collegiate. I definitely could have run.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's so dumb. I just had it in my mind, like, that's not me. I'll never be that. I'm never good enough. And I definitely could have.
Yeah.
They were like begging by my senior year. They were like begging kids, like just join the friggin' team. So I could have walked on for sure, but I was just scared, or that seemed too much. So I really just poured myself into the next step. So academics meant unlocking my future
So for
career.
your academics, they said that you could skip a couple classes. Like, what kind of classes were you getting into in your field right away?
Yeah, it was a lot of like design classes. The degree I have is in interactive media. It was actually called multimedia, but at that point, and so I learned like digital photography. I learned like standard photography. I spent time in a dark room, learned about developing film, design, programming, web design in particular. Spent a lot of time on that, which really kind of ended up being my career.
What was the one before web design? Oh, programming. What did programming look like back then?
I mean, it was kind of silly. Like in hindsight, the programming really was kind of scattershot and not, I mean, like the curriculum was really scattershot.
Yeah.
And not super focused. It's much better now. But we were like writing JavaScript and just stuff that you could do in a browser.
Okay.
And it was very kind of haphazard. Like it was a scripting course, and like then you wouldn't touch programming for 3 more semesters. So
gotcha.
At that point, it was kind of like a degree that was, because all this stuff was so new, and it wasn't really clear what professions were going to be born of like the internet and digital production. At that point, people were still shooting film, and digital cameras were still like not good enough. So like, were movies going to be shot on digital? Like, it didn't really know what sort of professions were going to be born of this. So like the curriculum was very like exploratory. And by senior year, you could like set a focus. And I think by that time I had focused on like video production and like post-production. So I thought I was, when I got out of college, I thought for sure I was going to be like work on movies.
Okay.
Like that's what I want to do. I work with special effects and all that shit. And I had, the basics skills in those things, and quickly found out that here in Chicago that there ain't no fucking jobs to make movies. Especially as a junior. Yeah. And I had no skills.
Yeah.
But there was a ton of jobs in web design. So that's how I got into web design.
So school built a strong foundation. Like you had some things available. As far as the work ethic goes, because I feel like a lot of people that were maybe your 6th or 7th grade self, they would struggle just with consistency and fighting through things that were tough. What was the mental conversation you had with dealing with such, I wouldn't say necessarily high pressure, but such high workload as a college student does?
Man, I would say most of my friends like indulged and used drugs to get through,
Okay.
Like,
was Ritalin that available back then?
Here's the deal. I found out like years after college that my friends were like doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
They knew that I would not be into it. And so I didn't know that like they were doing like that they had Ritalin or that some of them were trying cocaine.
Yeah.
And like, dude, I had no idea. I found out at a bachelor party once. I was like, what are you talking? Like, I thought we just drank, and these guys were like doing pills and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they just knew that that's not who I was. So they like kind of protected me from it. I didn't really have any, I guess, coffee and like just absolute grit. Like I lived my whole life until very recently, very scared. Very scared of not making it.
Gotcha.
Born of what happened to me early, and just like knowing that I've got to work harder.
Yeah.
I've got to punch above my weight. Like all that kind of stuff is just ingrained in who I am, to an unhealthy level. So in college, it was just like there is no other choice.
So there wasn't really a question: am I going to do this project? Am I going to read this? Am I going to do whatever it is? It's just the thing comes in my head what I'm supposed to do, and I go do it.
Exactly.
Okay.
This teacher says it's important. Now I'm going to do it. Even if I thought it was fucking stupid or whatever, like I'm going to do this because I cannot fail. And I sure as shit cannot borrow another $50,000 for another year of this.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends stayed for 5 years.
Yeah.
There was no chance that was happening for me. I was like so hyped to start making money and start my career. I thought I was going to move to the north side. I was a big Cubs fan at the time. And like live in the city and make a bunch of money, and that's just not at all what happened.
So other than school, like, did you ever go on any trips when you were in college?
Nope, too broke. I was so broke in college.
Well,
my now wife, she worked at Target, and she like financed. And I remember I was so broke, I didn't pay rent for like 6 months.
Okay.
And I just like didn't talk to my roommates about it.
Yeah.
Like my roommate all through college, junior and senior year, we lived in a house together, and there was like 6 months where I had no money, and he just paid it. You know? And I was like, I'll pay you back at some point. You know? So like by late senior year or late junior, whatever, I had finally gotten a job or whatever, and was able to like pay some of that back or borrowed it from my parents or whatever. But like I was so broke, so broke.
What did you do for food?
I mean, fucking. I borrowed it. Like tuition had a meal card or whatever. And it was $7,000 a year or whatever. So I would just run that thing raw and eat fried chicken sandwiches every day and French fries, like an absolute, just awful.
Yeah. Did you balloon up at all in college?
Nah, I probably gained 10 pounds. I was not, my metabolism, I think was so, what do you say, fast at that point, or like strong or whatever the hell you say. It wasn't until after college that I was like, uh-oh. Like, I got to get back into running or something.
Yeah. All right, so let's go senior year. Did you do an internship that then you could parlay into a job, or how did things work out?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what happened. I had an internship senior year at a production firm outside Peoria. They did all kinds of stuff. They did like interactive installations at the Museum of Science and Industry and other museums, and they did video production and created interactive like installations for museums and for all their, like for Caterpillar and all this kind of stuff. So I was like using all the skills that I learned.
Because Caterpillar's right there, right?
Yeah,
By Bradley.
yeah. So we did a bunch of like that kind of work, and they offered me a job, but I was like, that's not for me. Like, I want to go home. I thought I was going to go to the city and go to Chicago, and ended up just coming home and realizing that finding a job was a lot harder than I thought. I thought I should have stayed down there and taken that job and got a couple years of experience beforehand. So it took me a while to land anywhere. But yeah, that's exactly what happened. I had an internship, and that was like kind of the catapult into the rest.
So when you have your first job, do you have an apartment with your girlfriend, or what's the living situation?
I lived at home. For maybe 6 months. I got a job. My first job was in Oak Park at an advertising agency called Shaker. I think I was making $32,000 a year. And I remember when they made me that offer, I was like, fuck yeah, like I'm rolling in this. So when I got that job, I maybe worked 6 months and then got my first apartment, and my now wife, we moved in together, and everyone told us, terrible idea, too young, whatever. And they were right. It wasn't that we were too young and that we weren't in love. It was that we did not have enough money.
Right.
So things were really tough for a long time.
What was rent? What'd you say?
I think rent was like $825 a month.
Okay.
We had an apartment in Lombard, right near the train tracks, and my God, we couldn't afford it. And like every year they raised it a little bit. So I think we made it like 2 years before I decided I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go out on my own. Like, I've got all the skills and I've got projects lined up. I'm going to go out on my own. And the way I had the courage to do that was my wife's parents were like, forget the apartment, move in with us, build up some funds for a couple of years so you can build a house or buy a house and all that kind of stuff. And while I did not want to do that at all, I told myself, well, I can buy a flat screen TV now, and this will be like the fallback. I can try to go start a business. Start a business wasn't really, I could go try to be a freelancer. I never really thought about like being a business owner. That came later. Yeah.
So when you're doing your job, are you the only person that has your set of skills at the place you're working at, or what did that look like?
No, I was in a department, but like it was the advertising agency still around, and very good people over there, and I learned a lot. They were making the transition from print media and advertising to digital, and it was a big struggle, and there really wasn't nobody really knew like, is this going to be a thing? How much should we lean in? How much should we invest in this? So it was kind of a mess from that perspective. But we were doing work for like Google and for Kohl's and like, and I was like making designs for like.
Big stuff.
We did an advertising campaign for Google, and I remember putting some comms together. I don't think I ended up getting picked, but like, it was like a New York recruitment campaign, and I remember like I was using Photoshop to like color New York taxi cabs, the Google colors, and that was going to be like the thing. That was my concept, and I thought it was dope as hell.
Yeah,
they didn't pick it. But it was good. It was fun work. But no, I ended up leaving there not because like I was the only one who had the skills or anything, but just that like I knew I wanted to do this thing in web design.
Gotcha.
And I didn't see that there. And a colleague of mine, I couldn't call him a friend, from Bradley, he had started a company when he graduated called Chromatic. And he was building websites and he was really good at sales and marketing. Yeah. And he had more work than he could
Always
handle.
Good to have one of those guys around.
Right. And so I was like, yo, these guys are over here. All my colleagues from Bradley, or a couple of my friends from Bradley, are like just doing it on their own. That sounds fucking awesome. And I thought the money was going to be great, and it can't be any worse than the money I'm making now. So fuck it. Let's try it. Yeah. Well, the money was not better and the hours were longer. But after, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months or something, the guy who had started the company, he was like, you're kicking ass. Like I gotta give you some of the company. And that's how I became a business owner.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's when hard work actually gets you something other than a pizza party.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. He was a real good dude. And, years later, he was no longer interested in like the trajectory of the company. And so we bought him out and, wished him well. And it was like all amicable. It was, really good. But yeah, I don't think I'd be a business owner had he not seen whatever he saw in me and was like, you're taking this to all new heights, and doing things technically that I could never do. And you're clearly, I had good communication skills. We were doing client services work. So the company that I now co-own this company, we're just building websites for clients at that time. So that takes a certain set of skills. Like you've got to be a good communicator. You've got to be good in front of clients. You've got to be timely. Deadlines are super important. And at that time, like web design, everyone in that field was like a webmaster. You did everything when you made a website. You did the design, you did the coding, you did all the DevOps stuff. You put it up on a server. Like you handled all of it. Now, like those are specialties.
Correct.
Like,
front end, back end.
Yes, exactly. But to have, like, they would call that full stack. Like I had enough knowledge that I could do all the things. Yeah. And so that was very attractive to him. Like, oh, we're going to need somebody like that at this company. And there was just like 3 or 4 of us. So I got some equity. And we were off to the races.
So what kind of hours are we looking at when we start working?
Fucking hey, dude. I was probably working 15 hours a day. And a lot of that was just figuring out how to do the work, right. Cause my training at university was like very tangential to web design and programming. Like I touched it a little bit, but and my internship too taught me enough to be dangerous, but like I didn't know about best practices. I didn't know, there's a lot that I didn't know. So a lot of that was learning on the job. And so, if I had those same projects today, I would probably knock them out in 4 hours, but like it would take me 40 hours back then because so much of it was like, I don't know how to do this thing. I don't know how to make the computer or the browser do this thing that they're asking for. Right. I've got to go learn it. So, yeah.
So we work 15 hours. We come home.
I was at home. I worked from home.
Oh, okay. I've been from home before.
Yeah, the company has been distributed since before being distributed was a thing. Yeah, that had nothing to do with like being ahead of the time. It was we were fucking broke, and having an office and all that kind of stuff would have cost us so much money we couldn't afford our computers. Like we couldn't afford our equipment. So we've always been distributed since day one.
Distributed. I like that term.
Remote, whatever.
So when you got off, are you then just going getting a beer and sitting in front of the TV, or what's going on there?
Yeah, for a while I was really just focused on work and trying to like make money. But I quickly realized that I really care about moving my body, and I do a lot better when I move my body. So I set a goal that I need to get back into running, and that was like the only sport I really knew at that point and was had any talent in. And so I set a goal. I'm going to run the Chicago Marathon. And
that's a pretty lofty goal. What was the average mileage you were putting in on a long run back in the day?
I don't know, 10 maybe.
For the 800, you were running 10 miles?
Oh, no. I thought you were talking about training for the marathon.
No. So like beforehand, like training wise, because like I know track and cross country, some people are like, that's very similar. I ran both, but like track we're maybe running a mile in a day because like sprints and stuff like that is involved. Yeah. You guys were much better at your school.
Yeah, we were running a lot of miles. Like we were running a lot of miles. Okay. I would say on average probably 40 miles a week. Okay. For sure. A couple of those we would do 5 or 7 miles, just long runs.
So long distance you were okay.
Yeah, and basically in this program, like 800 was long distance. Like you would train with the long and middle distance. Like that was just it was distance, and then there was sprinting.
Gotcha.
And then shot, disc, all the jumps, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know.
So like I thought you were running maybe like a max a mile for long distance, and you're like marathon, but you had
and I was also like I was really into cross country. In fact, I might say that I was a better I was better track athlete, but I probably enjoyed cross country more. A lot more camaraderie. Yeah, you're in it together. Like track is a very solo thing, even when you're on a relay team. There's just 4 of you, and there's 50 kids on a track team. But like you have your event, it's at this time, so you're preparing by yourself, like all that kind of stuff. Cross country is like it's one race, and we're all going at the same time, and you can see your brothers or sisters or whatever you want to call them in the race with you. And are we scoring? Are we going to win? Are we close enough to the front? That meant a lot to me. So like that camaraderie, I loved. I love the fall, running in a forest preserve, cross country race in a forest preserve when the leaves are down and you can smell like that's like what heaven would be like.
What was your favorite cross country race that you remember running?
Oh, that's a good question. My senior year regional. So back then it was like regional, sectional, state. Okay. And we were like right on the cusp. Like, are we gonna make it downstate? And of course we didn't. So spoiler.
To make it downstate, do you need certain times or certain points at an event?
Both. Okay. Or either or. So like you can run in cross country. You could have run a certain time for at that point it was 3 miles.
Gotcha.
Or your team could score collectively in the top 5
Okay.
at regionals, and then sectionals I think was the top 3 teams. So your team could go through that way, or you could go through as an individual by like getting a certain time, hitting a certain time gate. But my favorite race senior year was at Montini, and I come to find out later that the distance was suspect, that maybe it wasn't quite 3 miles, but I like blasted it. And it was like one of those times where like I said, I like have a lot of time focusing, but I was like locked in the whole race. And like, even the coaches were like, you just had like your aura was different. Yeah. And like, I just ran my ass off. Yeah. And again, I was captain, but I was not our number 1 runner. Right. I was probably like 2, 3, most of the time 3. I think that day I was our 2, and we scored and we got through to sectionals. Yeah. And then we got our asses. We ran sectionals was over at Lyle High School, Community Park. And I hated that course so much. You have to run up that hill and it's just brutal. And I was just long, and cause it's actually 3 miles, not like at Montini, it was probably like 2.8, but I PR'd big time. You know, I didn't know it was short, but like that was it was just a good day, you know? Yeah.
So after you have a successful day like that or a race like that, how long does that high last for you?
Oh, fuck. Back then, it would probably last a lot longer than it would last now. It'd probably last me all weekend. You know, I was probably hyped about it all weekend and telling everybody about it and feeling really good. Like, okay, now next week, we're going to go downstate. And, you know, we haven't been downstate in a long time, and we're going to do it. And then, of course, we didn't. But, yeah, it would probably lasted a lot longer. As I got older, like, the wins lasted a lot less. Yeah. You know, there's a whole lot of stuff wrapped up in that, but... Yeah.
For me, whenever like after a rugby game, it was always like we weren't super competitive, but just feeling like beat up, but like it did something. Like we wouldn't get crushed, or maybe we won, but the whole weekend I'd feel like exhausted. I was like, I did something. Like
such an accomplishment. Yeah,
for sure.
I was just telling my wife yesterday, like one of the most important things to me now is to feel sore. Because sore is some sort of symptom of like accomplishment. I've done something. Yeah. And also like the biological things that are happening in your body. You're like releasing chemicals that make you feel good and make you feel better. Like if I'm not working out, like I'm a monster. Like it's so important to me. It's like only now am I realizing like, oh, that there's more to this than I just want to be fit. Yeah. There's like mind and body things that are.
So we picked the Chicago Marathon. So we're doing 10-mile long runs. Like, how do you plan out your schedule? And every day you like somehow found a couple of hours.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name, but there's like a Chicago area runner. Oh fuck, I can't remember his name. You know what? I'll get you the link and you can put it in the show notes because you're gonna have show notes moving forward. Hal Higdon, that's his name. Hal Higdon. Got it. He had I don't want to say couch to 5K deal, but it was like a beginner marathon, and he just mapped out every single day. And I stuck to that pretty good, except like some of the, I didn't have enough time for like intervals or interest. So I skipped some of the interval days, but like he basically said like the most important thing is the weekend long run. Okay. And that just ramps up over time. It's like a 10-week program or a 15-week program up till you do a 20-miler before you run the marathon. It's like 3 weeks out from, or maybe 2 weeks out from the marathon, so you have time to recover, but you run a 20-miler. And man, I just looked forward to that every single day after work. I was like, now I got to go do my run. And I didn't have kids at that time. And my wife was working and she was coaching volleyball. So like there was always time for me to dedicate to it. And I just like enjoyed it. So ran the first marathon and was like, I don't know, 4:10 or 4:15, and
it's not bad.
But I wanted to be sub 4. Yeah. It took 3 cracks at it to break 4, which, you know, when you look at it, that's like, those aren't fast miles, but like your body just starts to fucking fall apart. Like you are so dead at running 26.2 miles. So breaking 4 was kind of like what I wanted. I think I ended up running 3:40 something.
So how did you approach so you said it took 3 cracks at it. So the second one you didn't get. How did you switch from the second one to the one that you did break the 4 hour?
Well, by that time I was coaching cross country and track. And so maybe in hindsight, the difference was like I was training with the kids. Yeah. So when they were doing intervals on the track, I would do intervals on the track. When they were doing hills, some of the times I would run hills with them. When they were doing repeat miles, some of the times. And so like there was a competitive aspect to it. And like I can still do this aspect to it, and just like it's a lot easier to do any of these things when you're with a group of people that you care about. I mean, that's like we haven't talked about CrossFit yet, but like when I found CrossFit, I was like, inject this shit into my veins. Like I want to mainline this shit. It's competitive. It's doing all this cool shit I've never seen done before. I want to be able to do that. And you're with a bunch of cool people who are just all doing the same shit.
Yeah.
And so like that in hindsight was probably a big part of maybe why. Oh, you know what too? Because I was coaching those kids.
Gotcha.
A lot of those kids volunteered at the Chicago Marathon.
Nice.
And I had a couple plants last mile or the last water stop, they were going to run with me. And so the whole time I'm thinking Henry and so and whoever from my kids I was coaching are going to meet me at mile 24 or 25 and run me in for a mile. And I just like kept that in my mind. Like you got to get to there by 3:30 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I had like a temporary tattoo of all my mile splits on my arm, had it all dialed in.
Yeah.
And so knowing that I can't let these kids down, like they're going to see me, like I got to do this. So I think that might've had an impact on it too.
That's awesome. So you're working so many hours. How did you make the decision that you were going to start coaching cross country? That seems like a lot on the plate.
Well, at the time, I was working a lot of hours, but I wasn't making a lot of money. And like I said, I recognized that like moving my body was real important, and giving back and spending more time with. Subconsciously, probably I was thinking like I need to spend more time with this dude, Steve Wolf. He had such an impact on my life, and what a gift it would be if I could go learn from him some more, and then pass that same gift on to these kids. Let me help out. So I reached out, and I think it probably took me like 3 weeks to finally hit send on the email. Like, hey, I've got availability, and I'd love to help out. And like they responded in minutes, like absolutely, see you at practice tomorrow. Like we'd love to have you. And then once I was back into it, I was, I just jumped in with both feet. It's like, let's try to win a state championship. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be so cool. I get to help. Like, and that seemed really important to me. So even though it was volunteer and even though it was a lot of long hours, like track meets are the whole day. I just loved it. I loved spending time with him, and I loved learning from him, and just being able to help kids out, and it's like help them on the way the same way I was helped, you know, like about building character and doing it the right way and putting in the reps and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that it didn't matter.
Right.
And of course I didn't have kids back then. I wasn't CrossFitting back then. It was all I had outside of work.
Yeah.
So it was a really nice break.
You had work and track. What came
and
next?
Cross country.
What came next in your life that kind of moved some things around, and how did you figure out that it was time for that?
There was 2 major life events. One in career and then one in fitness. But in the career, we got an opportunity to work on a big project for a major, I can't say their name, for a major insurance provider who has a lot of commercials on TV.
Okay.
They had a project and they needed a lot of help. And it was basically like, we could keep you busy for the next 2 years. Like this was a game-changing project for us, but I was scared out of my mind.
Okay.
Like, how am I going to deliver on this project? This is like I got to build a major application. Like this is stretching my skills for sure. This is financially going to change my life. I was so scared. So I convinced one of my now business partners to quit his job at Northwestern, come over to my company on a handshake deal. I'll give you 1% of the company and $60,000 in salary, which is so silly that that's so little money. Quit, come do this with me. And then I felt confident enough to say yes on this project. And then that kept us busy for like 4 years.
Wow.
And we made a shit pile of money.
Yeah.
Like it changed everything. Like we were making so much money that we had to grow the company, and like we were turning down work and had to hire people and all this kind of stuff. So that was a major change. And that meant I was going to work more hours, and it was probably meant I wouldn't be able to be at all the meets. So I like kind of felt bad about that, but it was like I was volunteering, and they were like, "What are you talking about? Like this is your career, you know?" And then the other thing that happened around that time, winter, maybe 11 years ago now, it was like November, 11 years ago.
Okay.
A buddy of mine was like, "Hey, I've been doing this CrossFit thing. You should come check it out."
Yeah.
And he like showed me some video of some fucker doing butterfly pull-ups. I'm like, "What the fuck is that? That's the stupidest shit I've ever seen." Somehow he convinced me to come.
Yeah.
So then it was one workout, and I was snatching, and I was like, "I'm done. Okay, this is it. I'm in this now. Like I'm doing this."
First day they had you snatching, just getting after
absolutely ridiculous. They had me snatching 95 pounds. It was just awful, absolutely awful, and I was wrecked. So I went 2 days in a row, and this is between cross country and track. So I was like, I'm gonna do this for the winter and see what happens. And, but, before I knew it, I was like all in.
Oh yeah.
Knew who Rich Froning was, and I was just like all in on it.
What was your first box? Like, where'd you go?
It was CrossFit Paradox.
Okay. Yeah.
Which now, when they moved, is now CrossFit Backland over in Downers. So I was there for a couple of years and really into it, but like I was trying to do it all. I was trying to coach.
Yeah.
I was trying to do cross country, or I was trying to do CrossFit and run the business, and something had to give.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the volunteer thing is what gave.
Yeah.
So I stopped coaching, and I dearly miss it. But then, and it kind of stayed half in, half out for maybe 2 seasons.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't do both. And then we started having kids and bought a house, and like things just got different.
So first, let's go. The money starts coming in. At what point? You don't have to say a dollar amount, but at what point were you like, hey, like I made it? Did you take a breath? Like what was going on at that point?
Man, that's a good question. Have I made it? I still don't think I've made it. I'm still I still live my life pretty scared about finances and about like what's next. And despite like accomplishing every single thing I set out to do, I still live in fear. I've spent a lot of time and a lot of money on therapy trying to get that sorted. But I'm an anxious person. In fact, we should talk about your episode with Kelly.
Okay.
That was one of the only episodes I've listened to, so sorry.
Yeah. No.
But
you're good.
that had a major impact on my life, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But there was no point where I was like, okay, well, I'm done now.
Okay.
Like I did it. I still don't feel that way. But by all accounts, I've done all the things I set out to do. The problem is, if you're a person who has anxiety, like you can patch all the holes that you want patched, and you look up and there's 10 more holes in front of you. Like there's just more stuff that needs doing. There's very little time to reflect and feel proud or satisfied or any of that, because you've subconsciously moved the goalposts, and you didn't even realize it. So, I spent years and years and years, by all accounts, being a successful person, but absolutely miserable inside.
Okay.
Like not enough. And I could say that CrossFit was like a big part of that too. Like I just always was chasing more.
Yeah.
God, I wanted to snatch 225 pounds so badly. That goal might never materialize now, but got close.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. There was never a point where I was like, okay, we're done. We made it.
Yeah.
Like we're successful,
The boot has always been on your neck, just not time to breathe.
Yeah. In fact, right now, the reason we're sitting here, or the reason I have time to do this, is I'm on sabbatical from the business. I'm taking 3 months off. Running a company now for 15 years just took its toll. I was like, the stress was too great. It was just too much.
Yeah.
I had to take some time. So I'm taking 3 months off, and I haven't looked at email. I haven't been to a meeting. I don't know what's going on. I just know that my paycheck still coming.
Yeah.
Let's see, payday's in 7 days. This will be the second one. Let's hope it clears, because I don't know.
Yeah.
I told my business partners, I got 2 amazing business partners. I'm so thankful for them and have so much gratitude for them giving me this opportunity to take an extended leave of absence from the company. It's just real difficult.
So you said that you've been going to therapy for quite a bit of time. Yeah. At what point were you like, hey, maybe I should go see somebody?
That's a great question. I started with a business coach, a wonderful woman named Jen Derry, and she had a huge impact on my life. And she ended up getting sick. And so she wasn't going to be able to do coaching anymore. And business coaching, the way she does it, was like equal parts, like how are things going, how are you, how's the person, how are you feeling, and then like also like tactical, like have you thought about this for your career, and like all that kind of stuff. And it was like a great investment. But she got sick, and I think at that point we started looking around at other options, and my business partner Mark had read this book, I Used to Be a Miserable Fuck. That's really what it's called.
That's a good title.
By this dude John Kim, and he was like, I think I'm going to reach out to him to see if he wants to, he's a therapist, and see if he wants to, we were all doing coaching, and like, let's maybe try therapy. So he tried it. I read the book, and he was getting therapy with John, and he was like, you should join up on this. Like, this is really great. And so I wasn't doing the coaching thing anymore, and I needed something. And so tried it, and man, it was so nice.
Okay.
It was like such a game changer to just like go and be able to like drop it all and just explain what you're going through, had a huge impact on me. So I worked with him for a couple of years, and a bunch of things, but different things happened, and he handed me off to somebody else, and I'm working with her now, and she's amazing. And so it was kind of like a natural evolution from business coaching into therapy, but now like I'm so happy for it. Like I like wouldn't trade it. Like therapy is the most important meeting of my week, like without question.
So you said it changed a bunch of things. Like when you first started going to it, what did that look like? Was it every day you were just a little bit happier, or when things came into your head, you could just assess them differently, or what did that look like?
Well, I said it earlier that like the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. Early on, John had asked me, he was like, well, what does your relationship with you look like? And I looked at him like he had fucking four heads.
Yeah.
Like, what are you even talking about? Like, what does that even mean? It was like foreign concept to me to like have a thought or a care about me. All I cared about was succeeding, not failing. What does everyone else think of me? What can I do? What can I produce? Not who am I and what's my worth? And what do I think about it? It was just like, what's the next goal I have to knock down? So I had like a really dysfunctional and toxic relationship, both with work and with myself. I was very negative, very not enough. Should have done better on Fran. You should have done better in the open. You should have beat that dude or whatever. Never once was I like congratulatory or reflective or proud or any of that. So like, you know, that's just years and years and years of that. It's no good, no bueno. So I started to work really hard on what do I think about me, and what does me even care about or want? Like I've spent a lot of time trying to do what I think everyone else in this world wants me to do, or will make me look successful or whatever, or make sure I don't end up destitute, broke, putting things on layaway or not being able to go on vacation. But so I got so far out that I'd lost the signal, you know?
Yeah.
So therapy has helped me realize, like, you know, where all that comes from. Why is it that way? Why am I that way? Why do I have anxiety? Why am I so hard on myself? And, you know, just kind of starting to soften all that up and like have a much better relationship with myself. So like that is like just like anything else, you got to put in to get out. And I'm continuing to put in. But it's I mean I say it all the time to like even some of my, you know, closest bros who like are like, fuck therapy, like what are you even talking about? And I'll just continue to tell them like, you might think so, like they'll be, we'll be having beers or something, and I'll be like, yo, you know, I was talking to my therapist or whatever, and they'll be like, shut up about can we stop talking about your feeling, this kind of shit. But it's like, maybe I'll get through to them. Maybe someday they're going to need to know that it's cool. It's fine. Like it doesn't make you less of a man or any of that shit to go talk to somebody. So
what would be a situation in the past that now you treat differently that therapy has helped you with?
Right now I'm super focused on like setting good boundaries.
Okay.
And most of that is about like building a moat for myself. Like what is a reasonable expectation to set for myself? Because I would just bury myself in work. Like if a client was upset or an employee was upset or a production server was down, even if it wasn't my responsibility or even if I wasn't the one who upset that person or whatever, it was like, it's my company. My name is partially on the door. And it's a flaw in me if there's a flaw in the company. And so I would just bury myself in fixing it, which is awful, number one, for me, and awful for my family, awful for my friends, because I'm just saying, like, you're not important, you're not important, you're not important. This is the most important thing. So I'm working real hard on that. So that's one thing that's, like, definitely changing, and I intend to carry out.
So do you, like, have some tools in your toolbox where you take some breaths? Do you write it down in the journal? Like, what's the step-by-step on when something pops up like that? Like,
I would say, like, awareness, and, you know, reflection via journaling or what have you. You know, there's so many things. Breath work, going for a walk, getting outside, just like, you know, meditating.
Okay.
Like I've tried it all. Cannabis.
Okay.
Like these types of things have been a game changer for me. But like I said, it's about consistency and showing up and being honest. so therapy is the most important of those things, like weekly therapy for me.
Okay. So you mentioned something about Kelly's episode. What about that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, when you recorded with Kelly, Kelly Bombs, I believe is, and Gitas, who are now engaged to be married, thankfully. Well, congrats to them. Gitas was like getting ready to just start the gym or had just started it, and which is where we're recording at Revamped. And it just popped up that she posted it or something, and I've always thought she was a very interesting person, a very authentic person, and I wanted to hear what she had to say. So I listened to her episode, and she talked about, and I should note, like, I was probably at my lowest at this point. Like, I was real.
Okay.
I was in between therapists. I was like really struggling at work. There was a lot of things that were on fire, and business wasn't popping as much as it was, and very difficult sort of relational things with my business partners. Lots going on. And I was at my lowest. So when I listened to that, and she mentioned that like she had an undiagnosed ADHD, and she was like, she talked about how she went and got diagnosed, and she went to a certain place here in the suburbs of Chicago. And a lot of the shit she was talking about resonated with me. It's like, damn, I feel that way. Damn, I feel that way. Damn, I feel that way. And she talked about this program that she went and did at Heritage, and it was a 2-day evaluation, and it really helped her figure her things out.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what the fuck do I have to lose?
Yeah.
So I did the exact same thing. I went and did the exact same thing she did. I went and got diagnosed. I thought I had ADHD. I do not.
Okay.
I just have anxiety.
Yeah.
And I've gotten really good at living with it. But it had run its course. Like, I can no longer live this way. I'm miserable. I'm depressed. I hate everything. I find no joy in anything. Things I know I love, I don't feel joy because I'm so worried about the work that needs to get done, or the email that needs to get sent, or the tire that needs fixing, or whatever the fuck it is. Like, I cannot be present. And so I went and got diagnosed because of that episode. And from there, that was probably a year ago or so. Maybe a little more, maybe a year and a half, something like that.
Yeah, he was just putting, like, the stuff was getting moved in, like, that week.
So, yeah, a little over a year ago,
Yeah.
I went and got diagnosed, and, got together with a therapist who I love, and we started figuring things out. The way the timing of those things might be inaccurate, but it doesn't matter.
No fact checking here.
No fact checking here. But had a major impact on my, like, oh, no, there's a real thing here. I struggle with, like, mental illness as a general term, like that sound, whatever you want to call it. Like, I struggle with that.
Yeah.
And so that awareness has helped me, like, with the things that I engage in or don't engage in, or how I treat myself, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was Kelly's episode that convinced me finally to go see somebody and, like, get checked out and do all the tests. So goddamn, is that testing crazy?
So the process of the testing, it's not leaning you in the direction of something. It's just that there's a bunch of things that are available, or, like, how does that work?
There's all kinds of different tests.
Okay. Like,
they do the ink blot test.
Okay.
That's one of them. There's, like, cognitive tests. There's, like, number recognition and pattern recognition, and, like, really they're just testing you in all the ways to see how you respond to different scenarios.
Okay.
And, like, I was fine on all the cognitive stuff, all the stuff that, like, required focus. And even though I think I don't have good focus, like, if I'm put in front of it, if someone gives me a task, like, you need to, anytime this light lights up, press this fucking button, I crushed it.
I had that in middle school, and I do not remember how well I did on that.
Yeah. I'm going to guess it wasn't great then. So yeah, they just do all kinds of different tests, and at the end they give you this report, and they sit down with you and explain everything, and kind of give you a diagnosis and like what you should do.
Okay.
And it was super helpful. Like, absolutely one of the best investments I've ever made. And, like, they accept, like, all major insurances, so it, like, cost very little.
That's great.
Yeah, it was totally worth doing. Like, I would say, like basically anybody should go do this sort of thing. Just to know a little bit about what makes you tick and where you're strong and where you're weak is super helpful. Just like in the gym, like there are things that you over time start to figure out. Oh, I'm really good at that. I'm really good at handstand push-ups. I'm really good at muscle ups. But I'm really bad at X, Y, Z. And then you know where to work. And you know where to put your efforts.
So how do you approach something as far as maybe there's 10 or 20 things to work on? How do you pick which is the most important, or do you just kind of spread things out? How do you pick a goal?
That's a good question. Right now is kind of like whichever way the wind's blowing, whatever is like kind of tugging at me, like that feels like it needs attention right now. I'm going to lean into that, or that feels interesting to me. I'm going to lean into that. But maybe over time I'll develop some rigor and more, but I don't really have that answer yet.
Just because it pops in my head, what was your first big vacation like?
That's a good question. My wife, her extended family has some property in the Virgin Islands.
Okay.
And she surprised me and brought me down there with their family. Mm-hmm. And that was like an absolute mind-blowing experience to me. Like I'd never been anywhere like that.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. And like over time, as the business got a little bit more successful, we started to be able to afford things on our own. So now we can afford to do some of that shit, and it's kind of amazing. And I'm like, I've been on to a lot of places, but not to a lot of places since I have figured out my anxiety.
Okay.
So I've been to Barcelona, but I spent a lot of that time being miserable and worried and not really here and enjoying. So I'm really excited in the next, like over this break that I'm taking, we're going to go to Ireland, we're going to go to Mexico.
Nice.
And I'm really keen on what's that going to be like if I'm better, if I feel better. That's really exciting to me. So good question.
Yeah. It pops in my head. I was like, he hadn't gone on vacation, money, and then anxious. And then so I was interested to see how that was for you.
Yeah. And I shouldn't say like, this hasn't like destroyed me, but it's just been like a dark passenger for a long time.
Yeah. A little bit different than the last dark passenger. I heard that from.
What was the other dark passenger?
What's the shit? Dexter.
That is probably where that came from. It's probably subconscious. No, I'm not a murderer of any kind. At least not that I can recall. I've murdered nobody. But yeah, I don't mean to paint such a bleak picture. Like I've enjoyed my life to date. But not fully.
Right.
I haven't been fully present in a lot of it. And so like the next level of this game to me is like being able to control that demon and have dominion over him or her who has kind of run my life, at least for the last couple of decades. Just because I was so scared of failure.
Yeah. If you were to give that a name, what would that be for you?
Like, what would I name anxiety?
Or your dark passenger, or whatever it is.
Fuck, I don't know. I have no idea. Steve. How about Steve?
There we go.
Steve's a prick.
Steve's a dick.
Steve is a prick. One of my best friends' names is Steve. I don't know why I said that. He's going to be so pissed.
All right, well, we'll finish it up with the last two questions.
Yeah, sure.
What's your definition of health? Not necessarily the dictionary definition, but what is it to you?
Oh, man. Right now, for me, that would be, living an authentic life that is full of the things that will make you happy today and help you live a long life. So for me, that's both mental and physical. I'm not really a spiritual person. Maybe someday that'll be a part of my life, but it's not right now. So for me, that's like moving my body, being cognizant of what I put into my body, and being cognizant of the thoughts that I allow to exist in my mind.
Love that. And then what's something from your life that people listening to the podcast would be able to take away as a positive?
As a positive? Well, I just, I've been somebody who's just worked really hard. And, I do some business coaching of my own, and I'm always constantly reminding people who are a bit younger than me that like it takes reps. It takes reps. It takes grit. You've got to show up. You've got to continue to show up. And the days where you have the least motivation to show up are the most important. That is where you build your character. And so if you just trust the process, if you just trust that if you put in the reps, that you will get out something. And it likely won't be what you think you're going to get out of it, but you'll get something good out of it. And I've found that in throughout my life in all the different aspects, all the things I've tried and allowed myself to spend time on, be it CrossFit or the business or right now I'm like building iOS apps and like I'm so new to it. It sucks to be bad at something, but it's like I just gotta keep showing up. And like every couple of months there's like some breakthrough where I'm like, oh, that's how that works. And it's a good reminder that like the most important step is the next one.
I love that. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Boom.
Nailed it.